How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the... Wait a minute. All right, it's been a while since I've done this, so I've clearly forgotten how to start a video. So today we are going to be talking about the Revenge Project and their sixth full-length album, The Bequest of the Damned. This thing was released about a week ago, back in April 25th of this year, 2022. And prior to this album, since it's the sixth, they do have 5 other albums and an EP before this. And they started in about the year 2000, so they've been around for a bit. And the Revenge Project is a progressive black / death metal band from Bulgaria. So it's cool, we got a nice little foreign flavor going on here. The band is 5 members strong, and that is Petyo Kolev on vocals, Articorse on bass and vocals, Staffa on guitar and vocals, Demos on guitar and vocals, and Kalhas on drums. So we got a bunch of different vocalists going on here, probably more for live purposes, as I feel like I only hear about 2 different voices in the album. But speaking of the vocals, they were basically the forefront of the mix, on par volume-wise though with the guitars, not too much louder. They were very well performed throughout and pretty consistent and had a strong presence throughout. The vocal styling you can find on this album are basically these semi-deep raspy growls and this mid-tone screaming style. Think somewhere between Glenn Benton and Randy Blythe, maybe mixed with a bit of the dude from Amon Marth, and that's pretty much what you get for the vocal styles here. But it also sounds like Petyo and the other 2 vocalists for this, they have their own kind of unique voices on here, but those 2, Glenn Benton and Randy Blythe, are kind of the in-between styles of what I hear here. The guitars are definitely something that stands out in this album. They are very plentiful when it comes to riffs and tricks that they can pull out of their sleeve. But before we get onto that, let's talk about the mix. The guitars were about mid to high volume-wise in the mix, and they were balanced very well in the EQ. They had a very strong presence throughout the album and had a nice punch and crunchy tone. The different types of riffs you can hear in this album are tremolos, as expected, some chuggy riffs, some melodic pieces, and even some faster palm muted riffs that I enjoyed, and even some nice feely type of solo work, and even the odd pinch harmonic thrown in for good measure. Definitely enjoyed that little spice thrown in there. All right, let's talk about the bass. It was low to mid-range in the mix, just audible, barely able to make it out at points, but I could still tell it had a very plucky sound, and it mostly just had a subtle presence throughout the album. It complemented the guitars and drums pretty seamlessly from what I could tell, and definitely added that extra little punch and percussion in the background. Moving on to the drums, they were mid-volume in the mix, slightly under the guitars, but not too much, and a very nice balance in the EQ. The drummer had great timing on this album, very consistent overall, and it was a good performance, I'm gonna have to say for sure. The album had some awesome fills, well-performed double kicks, some pretty decent blast beats, and a good snare tone, not too flat and not too pangy, if you know what I mean. All right, so that being said, let's move on to some of my favorite tracks on this album. All right, so first is track number 1, Scorn By Own Eyes. It sets the pace for the album. You're right on the money for what you're going to be hearing for pretty much every track that comes after this. It has an awesome groovy ass riff around 3/4 of the way through, and I really enjoyed it. Definitely whet your palate for what's to come. My second favorite track on here was track number 3, and that is Reign of Rot. It starts off with a very energetic post-intro riff and has this amazing mid-song transition, definitely worth checking out, and ends with this blistering solo and sick ending riff that really gets your teeth gnashing and your head banging. And the third track that I really enjoyed off of this was track number 8, which is Requiem for a Last Goodbye. It instantly starts with a really catchy beat and has a pretty intense, blistering tremolo and blast beat middle section. And then there's a nice solo part wedged in between the end and the second quarter of the song. So definitely shows off the talent and some of the tricks that this band has up their sleeve. A couple of close honorable mention tracks, I would say, are Self-Castigation and Wasted Lies. Both of those were really, really good and were competing for the third spot on my favorite tracks list here. So let's talk about my overall thoughts on this album. It was, let me say this, it was an unexpectedly enjoyable surprise when I first put this on. When you hear the band name, The Revenge Project, you don't really think of something quite as impressive or as energetic or adventurous and fun to listen to than what you get with this band, or at least this album. So I was pleasantly surprised right up front, and they offer a really excellent blend of death metal and melody and progressive black metal elements. Pretty much every track was equally exciting and brought that adventurous pummeling sound to it. And generally, this is pretty much an awesome blend of Behemoth, Deicide, a little bit of Abath, and even a bit of Amon Amarth crammed together, mixed with a splash of bombastic and empowering energy to boot. Did I mention solos? Damn good stuff. So, as I like to end a lot of these reviews with, just a little bit of weakness or improvements that I saw that could be done here. And these are literally just nitpicking at this point, because this was an excellent album. Maybe for the future, or maybe I missed it in the past, maybe you did this in the past albums, definitely going to go back and check them out. But maybe you could include some of those atypical demonic black metal vocal styles in this as well, and possibly even some deeper growls or gutturals or gurgle style spiced in here and there. I definitely wouldn't change too much of what you're doing, that's for sure, but just adding those like higher elements of the black metal vocals and the guttural elements to kind of weed out the top and low end for vocal styles would be cool, because I'd like to say a little bit more about the vocals, but it was basically two different voices that I heard with slight variations on them throughout the whole album. And the only other thing I could say, but considering this is basically a little bit of black metal going on here, you can't really complain when you don't hear the bass that much. And with that being said, you could probably guess that I would like to hear a little bit more prevalent bass sound, but again, can't really complain considering the genre. So that is my review of The Revenge Project's The Bequest of the Damned, and I'm going to give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. So yeah, I'm Jesse Morgan, and I would buy this album. And before we go, just want to remind you guys, if you like this album, be sure to go check out their 5 other releases and the EP they have. Lots of good stuff there waiting for you if you enjoyed this one. That's it, and we'll see you next time. For Glory, for the Rebellion, Slammerella out.